I'm Josh, I'm an investment researcher and a qualified actuary, and in 2024 I lost over 20 kilos and finished off the year with a 5-day fast. In this video I'm going to run through the top 3 reasons why you're not losing body fat. So reason number 1 is that your body has adapted to your current diet. So your body is an adaptation machine and it's always trying to maintain stability. The idea of this kind of set body weight that your body is trying to maintain was first proposed in 1984 by Kesey and Corbett. So in order to lose weight, you have to keep trying to find ways to fight against this stability mechanism that your body has. And the way of doing that is by constantly ratcheting down the calories that you're consuming, because eventually your body will adapt to your current diet level. And that's why you often see plateaus. There are lots of different ways you can decrease calories. I've found that restriction diets work quite well, so I did the slow carb diet for a long time. You can calorie count, which I think works well, but it doesn't really allow for the macronutrients that are in the foods. Or you can fast, which is my current favorite, which I'll run on to in point number 3. So if you're like me and you've got plenty of fat stores, I started the year at 230 pounds and got down to 188, I think, by the end of the year. You're going to have to constantly be changing your diet. Your diet is very habitual. You get used to certain portion sizes, you get used to eating at certain times, you get used to eating a certain amount. So you have to be constantly thinking, how can I reduce this over time cleverly to constantly be reducing my caloric intake, because as my body's losing weight, I actually need less calories to survive. So I have to be constantly thinking about what am I putting in my body and how do I reduce that over time. Point number 2, why you're not losing body fat, is you're trying to exercise to burn body fat. In Burn by Herman Pontzer, he says that exercise doesn't change the number of calories you burn each day, but it does change how you spend them, and that makes all the difference. So the first time I learned about this completely blew my mind, especially as I used to spend hours a day exercising. But essentially, your body, like your calories in, tries to maintain stability in your calories out. So if you're doing a huge amount of exercise, it basically decreases the energy that's spent in other bodily functions, like keeping yourself warm or, digestion, for example. So essentially, similarly to calories in, if you change your exercise output, your body will eventually catch up and adapt. So that's why you often see like a nice big change when you start exercising, but over time that will plateaus. And I definitely found that as I was trying to maintain an insane cycling habit to lose weight, and the weight was actually piling on rather than coming off. So you can't out-exercise a bad diet, and this science proves it. As Herman Pontzer says, exercise will keep you healthy and alive, it just won't do much for your weight. So what I've actually done, and that's what I did in 2024, was not actually do any exercise or any strenuous exercise purely for calorie burn. I did quite a bit of exercise, just stretching, some basic HIIT, but that was more for my health rather than for my weight loss. I actually tried to keep exercise down to a minimum because I found that if I kept my exercise up, it elevated my appetite, and also it was really hard to track. So my hunger was all over the place, and therefore my diet was all over the place. So I found that by bringing exercise down to a near minimum, I was able to stabilize that, and that enabled me to focus on my diet. Point number 3, why you're not losing body fat, is that you're partially insulin resistant. Now this is my favorite one because it's what allowed me to lose the final few pounds going into the end of the year, and it's what I'm still using now. But it's this understanding of insulin and what it does within the body. So insulin is one of the fundamental hormones that affects fat accumulation and storage. As Dr. Jason Fung states in his book, The Obesity Code, insulin is a storage hormone. Ample intake of food leads to insulin release. Insulin then turns on storage of fat and sugar. When there is no intake of food, insulin levels fall and the burning of sugar and fat is turned on. So my theory is that if you've historically had a bad diet, you're probably quite insulin resistant, and that means that you've always had quite a high level of insulin in your system, and that's typically because insulin is released when you're eating regularly and you're eating quite sugary or fatty foods. And our modern diet, if you're not paying attention to it, can be quite sugary and fatty. And what happens is your body adapts to a certain level of insulin in the system, which means it gets used to having a certain level of insulin as a baseline. So when you eat more, it needs to release even more to achieve its actual purpose. The flip side of that is that the insulin levels in your body have probably been quite high on average, and that means that they very rarely get down to the low levels that are required for you to unlock the fat that's being stored in your body. So the way of fixing this is fasting. Now everyone's heard of intermittent fasting. There was a big trend recently. I've also read tons of studies that say that intermittent fasting doesn't do anything, but I'm a fundamental believer in fasting plus caloric deficit is one of the best ways to lose weight. The reason why fasting fixes your insulin resistance and allows a lower level of insulin baseline is because when you're not eating anything, no insulin is released, which means that your body is slowly bringing down its insulin levels over time. And anything in your body, as we've spoken about, takes a little bit of time to work. Now I'd always skipped breakfast and done this 16-8, but I've found that extended fasting dramatically reduced my hunger cravings and allowed me to be in a caloric deficit much more easily. So I'm a fundamental believer in that if you decrease your insulin resistance, you will get fewer hunger cravings cravings, and your body will better access the fat stores that are in your body, and it's so much easier then to be in a caloric deficit because you don't get those cravings. So there we have it. There are my 3 reasons why you're not losing body fat. I thought I'd just quickly touch on my experience at the end just in case you're interested. But yeah, I started off the year at about 230 pounds, so super heavy, had a good Christmas, and I was currently doing the slow carb diet, but my body had definitely adapted to that. And so I needed to find other ways to lose weight. And I went down the restriction route. I didn't want to do calorie counting because I couldn't be bothered to calculate the calories in all my food. So I looked at other restriction diets. I went down the keto route, but it wasn't until I found fasting that things really took off. So I started to do a 2-day fast once a week. And so I stopped eating Sunday night and then started eating on Wednesday morning. So it's actually a 2.5-day fast. And I found that the weight just started to fall off me. And the amazing thing about fasting is once you push through that initial barrier of doing a full day without eating, I think it's, you know, a day and a half where you stop eating the night before and you go 2 nights, 1 day without eating. That for me was the main barrier. But once you're through that, you realize that actually you feel so much better. Like once you've pushed through all the cravings, your body then goes into this kind of, like, my only theory is that it's this kind of like starvation state where we've grown from, you know, hunter-gatherers or, you know, animals that when their food was severely restricted, i.e. to 0, a lot of their bodily senses and functions kind of were switched on. So I'm actually now more addicted to the mental clarity you get from fasting rather than the weight loss, which is interesting. I feel like you get a huge amount of drive. I don't know what it does to the dopamine system, but definitely feel like I get way more productive when I'm fasted. It's also cheaper. I'm not spending any money on food at work. I used to buy lots of horrible food in the office, which cost a lot of money. I wasn't very healthy, so I'm pleased I'm avoiding that now. And yeah, I'm just absolutely addicted to it. I did a 5-day fast just before Christmas to get me into the Christmas spirit. Well, actually, it just set me up, meaning that I absolutely 0 guilt over the Christmas period and ate whatever I wanted. And 5 days was a bit of a challenge. I knew that Tim Ferriss did a 5-day fast, and I also read about it in the Dave Asprey book that 5-day fasts were on the cards. So I pushed myself to do that, found it absolutely fine, and felt great afterwards. I actually went straight to break my fast. I had a really good breakfast. They say often to break fasts you should have a high protein meal with lots of fiber, so I did that and then went straight to a Christmas party, and everyone was literally saying how amazing I looked. So
wow.
It just goes to show, if you can deal with that, you know, push through the idea of not having food for a day or so, then you really can get the results. So my current fasting schedule is a 2.5 day fast. So I now only eat on the weekends and on Wednesday. I'm currently 62 hours fasted right now, feeling great, feeling good, but looking forward to my next meal. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm going to continue to do this schedule. On the days when I do eat, I eat super clean. I think that's the other thing. If you're fasting, any food tastes amazing, so you want to make sure it's kind of as good and healthy as possible. So I typically just break a fast with some good quality organic meat, grass-fed, and green vegetables. So yeah, I'm trying to get that protein and fiber back in the body. As I said, like, I'm just trying to lose weight at the moment. The exercise angle, it doesn't bother me. I've not got any physical goals, and I'm not that bothered about muscle loss either, as I tend to gain muscle quite easily. So I'm quite happy I could put that back on if I needed to. This also ties in with my belief about that I trust things that are time tested for humanity, and fasting. There is a culture of fasting in all major religions going back to ancient times, and I think it's a core part of human culture that we've kind of lost in this capitalist society that we live in. So that's another reason why I am a believer in fasting as an approach. So there we have it. That was my video on the 3 reasons that are keeping you fat. If you want to hear more from me, don't forget to check out this one in here. Thanks.